Um, Good afternoon to everyone. It's my great pleasure to be here to present some of my research activity. This topic is just noticeable distortion or just noticeable difference. This is a research topic I have done maybe the research for quite substantially in the past few years. So I like to share some of the problem. I would like to maybe, because when I prepared this talk, I found actually there are more problems than answers. So I'm going to tell you what I know and what I don't. Also, maybe I give you an overview first, then I will try to extend the scope of concepts of the research in this area so far, put forward some of the ideas of further research for discussion. Of course, research we cannot tell for sure what is the next step. Okay, firstly, I will tell you what is just noticeable difference, JND for short. Okay, suppose we have certain signal x, right? Then we can change this x to certain amounts. The minimum amount we must change before the human can perceive the change. This is called JND, right? Okay, then basically alternative term is threshold for signal changes. Okay, a related term would be just no noticeable distance, JND. This is very related to JND because all the concept here related to human perception, right? So if we set the human perception agreement level at 50% to be noticed or 50% to not to be noticed, then these two terms is equivalent, right? It's 50% is equivalent. But if we think in order to reduce the degree of randomness, we set this agreement level to 75%, for example, then JND will be greater than JND. But nevertheless, this belongs to the same concept and same process. Okay, just some clarification in order to understand the term in the literature. But JND is more popularly used than JND, although they are similar. Okay, then what can be the X in this? We talk about JND for X. Then what can be the X? X traditionally is signal, one signal, right? So for the naturally captured signals like a video image, we can have JND. For computer generated signals like graphic animation, we also can calculate JND of major JND. Increasingly, we have screen context image, which is a combination of graphic, text, naturally captured image. Okay, then speech audio, we can do JND. Haptics, smell, and taste also is one kind of signal we can have JND measurement and calculation. This is the traditional form of JND so far, but I think actually we can extend this to other derived quantity like emotion. Emotion is a derived quantity based on one or more signals listed here. And also quality and user experience. We actually can calculate JND as well. Apart from that, for technical specification like resolution, bit rate, synchronization, and system performance accuracy, we also can calculate JND. Although not much research in that end, but I think this can be extended to that domain as well. Okay, then firstly, I give you some example for JND. We start with sound. Okay, we all know if the frequency change, we can hear that, right? So what is the JND for sound? For sound, below 2K hertz, the JND is constantly 1 hertz. So probably this is why when we define hertz as the unit of frequency. So that means constantly 1 hertz, our human ear can sense the difference of 1 hertz below 2K hertz. But after 2K hertz, the JND rise sharply. That means the bigger JND means the difference have to be bigger in order to be noticed or sensed. Okay, then in other words, JND is the opposite of sensitivity of human perception. Okay, then also for sound, if it's for loudness, we can see actually the sound energy, the bigger the sound energy, actually the JND drop. That means our human ear is more sensitive to loud sounds than the quiet one. Also, we can see these curves are depending on the frequency as well. So basically, JND is a multi-dimensional problem. In this case, is a function of frequency and loudness energy level. Okay, image case. Your left-hand side image is the original image. Your right-hand side image is a noise image, but we shape the noise carefully use a JND model. Because a JND model for image, we can determine computationally the tolerance of each pixel or each subband coefficients. So if we use the JND, and if the JND model is accurate, we actually can shape a lot of noise without being noticed in eye. So this is one model published in CSVT 10 and 2010. We hide the noise, we add the noise to those higher JND area. Actually, we can drop the PSNR to around 28 dB without being noticed. Of course, this is very useful for at least for compression of image, water marking, etc. Okay, then the two examples in sound and speech and sound and image we just given actually is a strict sense of JND. That means we evaluate the degree of being noticed strictly. We try to avoid the difference being sensed. But in some other cases, we don't need to do it so strictly. So it depends on the utility. Like this example, this is the graphic generated by computer, 100% of rendering time. And this only use half of the rendering time. Actually, if you look at closely, actually you can see the difference, right? Absolute difference is there. But if you generate these two images for certain purpose, like in this paper, they think the utility is firefighting equipment's instruction and training. What happens when the fire started, right? So in that case, actually the difference in here is not affecting the purpose of the usage. So in this sense, if the utility is clear, we also can define these two images actually is within one JND. We can do something more. Like these two logos of BMW in different times, different year. Actually, of course, if you absolutely compare these two images, you find the difference. But for the marketing and branding purpose, they are equivalent. There are no difference. So in certain sense, we can define this is also within one JND. Before we move on, I give you more examples for the branding in the marketing and industry. over the years, companies need to change their logo and brands or repackaging due to various reasons. I list some of the reasons here. Okay, then the emphasis here is in order to avoid the rebranding extra marketing effort. Actually, we think two consecutive logo, the marketing people have to make sure the changes are within one JND, at least for the consumer point of view. Of course, then if you compare non-consecutive two logos, of course, they are noticeable or quite different. So that is, if there are many JND add up together, then there may be a noticeable change. Okay, this is some JND concept in the marketing, not engineering area. Then back to the engineering area, Retina Display by iPhone, they claim, at least Steve Jobs claimed, if the resolution is above this PPI, actually human eye cannot recognize any difference if the viewing distance is 1 arm's length. Okay, so this is somehow related to the JND concept, because if you have a larger PPI value, actually the improvement in the perception of the viewing actually is smaller than 1 JND. Of course, it's arguable whether this is an absolute number or not, but there must be the threat for human to notice any difference. Okay, then other cases of JND, some Swiss watch, they claim their second hand, the movement is below JND. Actually, it goes from 0 to 60 seconds. You cannot notice the change. Okay, the sunset, some people think sunset is below 1 JND. But some people don't disagree. They think they can notice the speed of the sun, drop the fading of the sun. Musician, a successful musician have to make any movement below JND, the crucial one, right? So that they can make a trick out of our eye. For product upgrading, definitely you have to make it beyond 1 JND, otherwise you waste the engineering effort. For the price increase, if possible, the company have to make it lower than 1 JND, if possible. Sometimes. Okay, then why JND model, concept and model as significance? Actually, it determines how accurate human senses are, and also, actually, in other words, the limits of our capability. And also, by study JND, because it's a critical measurement, we actually get more insights on an understanding in perception and the cross modality interaction. It also, because our perception is nonlinear, right? Then, if we can determine the first JND, second JND, third JND, actually we can turn the measurement, non-linear measurement, into a linear measurement, although each JND may be different. Okay, then in practical sense, we actually can facilitate the decisions, various decisions. We know where our engineering or even business efforts should focus. If the perception of the customer or the user are our ultimate goal. And then we can actually turn, we know our human body organs are not perfect in the engineering terms, but we actually can turn this imperfectness into the advantage of system design, like saving of resources, also improve the performance, etc. Okay, then we know if we cannot measure something, we cannot improve it. So this is why we are so interested in the measurement itself, also consequently the computer modeling. Okay, then I think I already finished my first half of the talk, which is I try to convince you JND is a meaningful concept. Then I try to give you an overview what can we do for computer programming for this. Okay, first of all, JND is something about being distinguished, not equal, right? So if in mathematics, if something being equal, for example, A equal to B and B equal to C, then we can jump to the conclusion A equal to C. But in JND, this is not the case because if A is not does not distinguish with B, and B does not distinguish with C, then A and C is not necessarily do not distinguish each other. So this is the difference. And also you can see in the next some discussions and some confusions and actually come from this point. Okay. Then there are several different classification possibility for JND. Okay, as we mentioned before, we can define absolute or strict sense JND. That means we try to make it absolutely not noticeable. In some application, we can allow the utility-based JND, as we already give the example earlier, that we can detect the difference, somehow the difference, but it does not affect our purpose. Then we can term it as a broad sense and JND as well. Then we can classify it into the effect. Or for example, JND for distortion and JND for enhancement. They may be different. Although majority of the work so far is for distortion, not for enhancement. But I believe enhancement need to consider extra or difference factors. According to the numbers of subjects, we may have a typical JND. That means that somehow out of the measurement for many subjects, or we can do a personalized JND because many applications we need to model the algorithm for one particular user and one particular expert and one particular patient, etc. Okay, then what we have. When we're talking about JND, a lot of people immediately point out Weber law. This is probably the best known theory in this field. Weber law states if we have a stimulus I0, we can always find the minimum delta I, which is the changing part, which is proportional to I0. Linear relations. This is an example, right? This is if we have a uniform background in image, and then we change the center portion from the background, gradually increase or decrease the luminance, you find somehow follow this relation. Also, we can measure two lines length. For example, we set two lines here, and then increase this portion's length gradually. Upon certain points of the increment, you can notice the difference. So K is a constant, roughly is 2% for heaviness, the weight, 4.8% for loudness, and 7% for brightness. But the problem is not solved, but simply because in reality, K is actually related to R, it's not linear. Take one example. The example is so for frequency in sound. Actually, this K is decreasing from infinitive to 0 before 2K hertz. And this is linear, of course, it's linear. Also, this relation is not held for all the stimulus, apart from several phenomenon. More importantly, in real world problem, actually a lot of stimuli presented at the same time, which cannot be answered by the Weber law. Even for the brightness, which is Weber used for the original theory, actually this linear relations is for luminance, in the analog luminance. When we come to the digital image, actually the relations is no longer linear. So it's a curve like this, because we already do a lot of processing before the image being shown in the device, gamma correction, etc. And also we set the average of every image to be half of the dynamic range, 1 to 8. The many camera does this. Okay, so the problem is not solved. Then how? This is the general way for JND measurement. Okay, for example, the X value here represents the strength of the signal. This is the vertical one indicates whether we can recognize the change or not. Okay, so suppose we have I0, then I0 we get our human sensing organ get used to it. This is the adaptation time, adaptation point. Then you increase the strength of the signal. Initially, there is no change in perception. You cannot sense any change, right? And then until you reach certain point, then you sense the change. So this JND, if it's 50%, probably you reach this point, you start to have a jump. If it's 70%, then you actually you have to